Electric cars have already brought us so many new and exotic brand names, haven't they? Well, here's one you might just already know. Behind me is the all-new Fisker Ocean. This is a mid-sized, all-electric SUV that's been designed and engineered in California, but it's being made under license in Austria at Magnus Steyr, which is the same company that makes the Jaguar I-Pace and E-Pace, the BMW Z4 and the Toyota Supra. And this car is all about usability, range, sustainability, but also style. It's been designed by the same man that bought you the BMW Z8 and the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. And it's a good looking car, isn't it? A little bit Range Rover Evoque perhaps from some angles, but still distinctive. And you might think it looks even better when I tell you that this isn't some £100,000 luxury segment irrelevance. It's a car that's coming to the UK this year, 2023, and it's going to be available from less than £40,000. So Fisker clearly is a name you need to know. So here we are then, folks. The Fisker Ocean SUV looks on the face of it like a pretty ordinary mid-sized electric car, but it's got some interesting features and some really significant ones, I think. And we'll start with the slightly sillier ones and move our way to the more important ones. So, you know how Teslas make that funny sort of reversing noise, that low speed safety noise? I think Johnny Smith referred to it as chorus of dead people, quite amusingly. Well, this makes its own noise, and it's a bit like somebody sort of tuning up a Fender Stratocaster or something. It's kind of like an electric guitar-y noise. I quite like it. It comes with a solar panel on the roof. Now you might, if you know this car, you might have read that about it. You only get it if you have the top of the range one. So if you're spending £60,000, you get an EV with a solar panel on the roof, which is, you know, what people have been asking for, isn't it? Why on earth don't they put solar panels on those electric cars so they charge themselves? Well, the reason is because solar panels generally are heavy and expensive and not worth the power that they would add to an electric car if you did that. I mean, now, evidently, they're lighter and maybe worth adding. This one, Fisker reckons, maybe adds 1,500 miles to the range of this car over a year if it's parked somewhere sunny. In the UK, I don't suppose it would quite add that many miles, but listen, they're free miles, aren't they? If you went on holiday over the summer, parked it up for 10 days and you came back and it had 40 or 50 more miles than when you left it, well, that might get you home, mightn't it? It might make the difference. So why not? So that's the solar panel covered off. Next on the list of silly features, you might have noticed this 17-inch infotainment screen. It's quite large. I'm classing this as a silly feature, even though it might be one of the reasons you like the car in the first place. It's got a lot of functionality integrated within it, a bit like the same system on a Tesla has. The reason they do it like that is so that they can add functionality and change functionality over the air simply with the software. If there were more marked switches around the interior, you couldn't change their function. So it is the way it is for a reason. It's not just because touchscreen. But what it does, when you're sitting in your car plugged into a fast charger waiting for an hour to fill the battery, you can put it into Hollywood mode and it spins round and goes horizontal, and then you've got a 17-inch widescreen system that you can watch your favourite Netflix TV show on while you're waiting for your car to charge. There is also a little fold-out table in the armrest. They call it a taco tray. It just sits about here, so you can put your coffee or your Dunkin' Donuts or whatever right next to you while you're sat watching your TV show. And the passenger's got a little fold-out table as well, and it's all very sort of drive-in movie, you know. They like that. It's a bit American market, but I quite like it as well. Next on the list of silly features, California mode. Now, again, if you buy an upper level car, all, where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 out of 8 panes of glass on this car can drop down and open up. And of course the sunroof does too. So when you're just driving along and you fancy opening the windows, you can press this button up here. Here we are. And go into California mode. There we are. Now that's not just the side windows open. That's the rear windows and the windows at the side of the boot and the rear screen and the sunroof. It's supposed to give you a sort of open air convertible like driving experience for when you're cruising down Sunset or around the M25 on a Friday night, whatever takes your fancy. But it gets quite blowy and noisy when you're being overtaken by HGVs. So we'll pop it back up for now while I talk to you. Up they go. Quite novelty that. But again, I'm classing it as a city feature. Right, to get back to the technical side of this car, this is becoming more important stuff now. As I said, you can have a single motor front wheel drive Fisker Ocean. That'll come with about 275 horsepower and about 275 miles of European WLTP certified usable range. That has a lithium iron phosphate battery. They won't say for now how much capacity it has, but we can imagine it's probably about 65, 70 kilowatt hours of usable capacity. Because it's LFP, it's cheaper than the other battery capacity. So if you have the twin motor Fisker Ocean, you get a bigger nickel, manganese, cobalt battery of the sort that has been more widely used by electric cars generally. And that has 113 kilowatt hours of total capacity. That's a big battery. Considering you can get one of those cars for about £50,000 in the UK, for that sort of money, Volvo, Hyundai, BMW, they'll give you about 75 kilowatt hours of usable power, maybe a little more. Tesla maybe might give you 80, 85 kilowatt hours. Nobody gives you over 100 kilowatt hours of usable battery capacity for that sort of money is to usable range. They claim something like 440 miles of WLTP range for the upper level versions of this car. I've been driving this one today, started out with about 90% charge and indicated 700 kilometers of range. And I thought, well, that'll disappear as soon as we hit the Autobahn, but it hasn't. I think this would genuinely be a 350, 400 mile car in mixed UK driving. Perhaps 350 on the motorway, 400 if you did a bit of slower A road as well. Around town, maybe 450, 500. That's a lot more range than you get anywhere else for about £50,000. So that is a big value selling point of the sort that Henrik Fisker has been talking about for this car. He wants to bring people in to buy an Ocean who haven't been brave enough to have an EV before. People who maybe think, oh, well, that won't work for me because I can't charge at home, because my town isn't particularly well serviced for fast chargers, because I've got a long commute, whatever. He wants those people to think again when they read about this car, and I think they will, because it's the sort of car that you could maybe charge up once a week. If you've got a 400 mile range, that's the same as filling up a combustion engine car once a week. You don't necessarily need to be able to charge it at home to make viable sense out of the ownership model. So that's important, I think. You know, your Polestars, your Nissan Arias, even your Teslas and your Ford Mustang Mach-E's, they're not at 400 usable miles yet, are they? And then we can talk about the value of the cheaper model. So the entry-level price for the Fisker Ocean, for that front-wheel drive 275 mile version, is $35,995. I mean, wow, that's like Kia Niro EV money. It's a Peugeot E2008 in mid-spec probably, isn't it? I mean, this is a whole lot of car for $35,995, even if you can only afford the front-wheel drive version. And 275 miles of range might turn into more like 225, 250, and it's still a decent chunk of range compared to those cars. There's a lot of EVs for 35 and a bit grand that probably don't even do 200 miles. So there's value in the entry-level model, and there's value in the twin motor model. This is at heart a pretty sensible car. It's a rational car. That's what it's about. It's about reassurance. It's got the range you need. It's got the space you need. It works. It will suit you. And that's the main thing. Dynamically, it's fine. Comfy. It will appeal, I think, much more to your sort of Land Rover, Volvo, Mercedes buyer than it would to your BMW, Audi, Porsche Macan type buyer, because it's not especially sporty, it's not exciting. After a Tesla, it might feel a little bit middle of the road, but Teslas put on that sort of sporty firmness, don't they? That kind of speed in the steering, that firmness in the suspension. This car has none of that. It's very grown up, it's very easy to drive, but it's comfy, it's fairly quiet, and it's practical. It isn't the most luxurious, rich, lavish sort of car. They sort of think the trappings of your old school luxury car brands might be sort of fading away slowly. They think people don't want them anymore. They think your electric car buyer of today is much more likely to respond to a sustainable model of building cars than they are to something that just feels a little bit more expensive. So the materials in this car are quite widely recyclable. They're designed and specified so that they haven't got silly coatings or funny little effects on the dashboard mouldings or the door cards, so that they're easy to recycle, they're simpler to make, they require less resource. Same with the seat upholstery and the decorative Alcantara here on the dash. It's nice, it's not overdone. They haven't added decoration for the sake of it, because that just makes the manufacture complicated, and they don't want that. That's time. That's resource. They're all about streamlining to make things easier. And they've done life cycle assessments on this car, concerned with how much energy is used upstream of their manufacturing with the building of the components right the way through the usage phase of the car. And they think this has a lower life cycle carbon impact than all of its electric rivals, cars like the Polestar 2, the Volvo XC40 Recharge. And considering the size of its battery, I think that's pretty impressive. So there's every reason to believe that this car can do some fairly big things, I think, in the electric car market, because it's well priced, because it's practical, because it looks good, because it's got the usable range that it needs to really reassure people that they can use an electric car and it can be viable for them. But it's also, because it's from a new brand, it hasn't got all that baggage that the legacy brands have to contend with. If somebody's looking to buy their first electric car, they want to make a change in their life, they want to do something responsible. You can debate the rights and wrongs of electric cars till the cows come home, and I know lots of people like to do that, but if you have decided that your next family car is going to be electric, whatever the reason, you probably don't want to buy a car from a legacy brand. You probably want the world to know that you've done something different. Surely that's why people buy Teslas. Well, now they can buy a Fisker instead. I mean, that's choice, but it's also a statement, isn't it? I mean, it's a problem that legacy brands have got to contend with ultimately. It's why Mercedes EQ cars look like that, I suppose, because they're trying to be a sort of an anti-Mercedes. So there you go, that's the Fisker Ocean. An interesting electric car, I think. Could do some quite interesting things in the family EV segment, especially for people who didn't think they were quite ready for an EV. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There'll be more videos like this very soon. See you again.